The world had barely awakened on the morning of July 31st, 2023, when the news broke. A cold, quiet statement. Angus Cloud was gone. No warning, no slow decline visible to the public. Just a sudden absence, like a light that had always been on in the corner of a room, flickering out without a sound. His friends spoke of laughter days before. His family spoke of the pain he carried silently. The headlines moved quickly, faster than anyone could process, faster than grief could form into words. People searched for answers, for clues, for signs that had been there all along. And yet, the truth was softer, darker, quieter than speculation. The truth was loneliness. The truth was grief. The truth was a heart that had been cracking for years, long before fame found him. The world kept asking, how could someone so loved feel so lost? How could someone with millions watching still be unseen? And somewhere in that silence is where the real story begins. Angus Cloud was born as Connor Angus Cloud Hickey on July 10, 1998, in Oakland, California. Oakland wasn't a city that softened reality. It confronted you, it shaped you, and for Angus, it gave him edges and textures he would one day carry into every role he touched. He grew up surrounded by Irish-American culture, raised by parents who had crossed an ocean long before he was born. His childhood was not polished or glamorous. There were no dreams of Hollywood in his house. There was just ordinary life. School, friends, neighborhood blocks, small routines that build a person. But Angus was not a loud child. He watched more than he spoke. He absorbed people, faces, tone, the way people hide pain behind laughter, the way fear lives behind the eyes. These were the things he learned first, long before cameras found him. He didn't know it then, but he was already studying humans the way an actor does. Not to perform, to understand. He attended Oakland School for the Arts, the same school that had shaped many talents before him. He was surrounded by dancers, musicians, actors, and creators. Yet even there, Angus did not stand in the spotlight. He worked behind the scenes, building sets, fixing props, carrying cables. He preferred shadows over the stage. He wasn't avoiding attention. He simply didn't need it. During these years, something began to shape inside him. A subtle sadness, not dramatic, not loud, just a heaviness. A quiet weight that never announced itself. No one knew where it began. Maybe it came from feeling different. Maybe it came from watching the world too closely. Or maybe it came from the accident. Because before fame ever arrived, before the world ever knew his name, Angus nearly lost his life. One night, when he was just a teenager, he fell into a construction pit. No one saw him fall. No one heard the impact. He lay there, injured and bleeding, alone in the dark. Hours passed. He should not have survived. But somehow, he did. He woke up in the hospital with a traumatic brain injury. Metal plates were inserted into his skull. His face was reconstructed. Scars formed that he would carry forever. He once said that he thought he was going to die that night. Everything after that felt like extra time, borrowed time. This accident didn't just change his appearance. It changed the way he viewed the world. When someone has seen the edge of life, everything after is colored differently. Colors are quieter. Pain is closer. Laughter is softer. And people rarely understand why. Years passed. He worked normal jobs. Restaurant work, retail. Days blending into days. He was not looking for fame. He never chased it. There was no audition room, no ambition, no dream pinned to the wall. Fate simply found him. We return now to the beginning of his rise. Not the rise to fame, but the rise of identity, of self. Of the boy who was still trying to understand the world that kept shifting beneath his feet. After surviving the accident that nearly took his life, Angus moved differently through the world. He did not walk with urgency. He did not chase anything. He moved with a softness, a slowness, as though every moment could be the last. People who met him often said he felt calm, comforting, like someone who understood pain without needing it explained. He did not tell his story often. He did not need to. His silence spoke for him. In 2018, when the casting director stopped him on the street, Angus had been working at a small chicken and waffle restaurant, a regular job, a normal job, one that kept him grounded and anonymous. When she approached him, he shrugged it off. He was used to strange encounters in New York, used to people who wanted something. He never imagined she wanted him simply as he was. But she saw something that Hollywood was always searching for and rarely finding. Authentic soul, a face that carried truth without speaking, a presence that could communicate entire histories without lines of dialogue, something raw, something unshaped, something that had not yet been trained out of him. Everything the world would later love about him was already there. When he walked into the early readings for Euphoria, the room shifted. Not because he entered like a star, but because he entered like someone who did not care about being one. Sam Levinson, the creator, watched him speak and realized the role of Fesco was not something Angus needed to act. It was something already living inside him. A softness wrapped in hard edges. A boy who had been forced to grow up too soon. A boy who understood survival the way others understood breathing. The filming began. Long hours. Emotional scenes. A cast made up of rising faces and young talent. Zendaya, Hunter Schafer, Jacob Elordi. These were actors already touched by the industry machine. But Angus was untouched. Pure. His presence changed the tone of scenes. Slowed them. Deepened them. He didn't deliver lines. He felt them. Every pause. Every glance. Every quiet moment became a language in itself. When Euphoria premiered on June 16, 2019, Angus was not prepared. He had never been active on social media. He never expected followers or fan edits or interviews. But suddenly, the world knew his face. They knew his voice. They began to project themselves onto him. The gentle drug dealer. The misunderstood protector. The silent guardian. Fesco became a cultural archetype of the boy who is dangerous to the world but gentle to the one he loves. People did not separate the character from the person. They saw them as the same. And this is where the fracture began. Angus was still just Connor from Oakland. He did not see himself as a star. He did not want to perform the life of a celebrity. Photo shoots made him uncomfortable. Interviews made him anxious. Fame made him feel like he was being watched, examined, dissected. He was not trained for the performance of public life. And so, while others climbed deeper into Hollywood's rhythm, Angus hovered at its edge, half in, half out, trying to hold on to who he was before the world saw him. Yet, something else was happening beneath the surface. While the world celebrated him, life at home was changing. His father, Richard, had always been his grounding force, a teacher, a man who believed in kindness, someone who understood that the world could be harsh but insisted on love anyway. Angus looked up to him. He followed his calm, his humor, his emotional quietness. His father was the stability beneath everything. But in late 2022, Richard grew ill, the kind of illness that cannot be ignored, the kind that changes air in a home. Angus returned home to Oakland often during this time. He sat with his father. He helped him. He waited. Grief is slow. It does not strike like lightning. It settles like fog dot. And then, on May 18, 2023, his father passed away. This moment did not break him instantly. It hollowed him. It took something central in him and replaced it with silence. He cried, sometimes, but not loudly, not dramatically. His pain was inward, private, heavy. He once told a close friend that everything good in his life felt pointless without his father to see it. When he returned to Los Angeles after the funeral, people noticed the difference. His smile was still there, but it didn't reach his eyes. His voice was softer, slower, as if each word required effort. He looked like someone trying to hold himself up from inside. The world still saw Fesco, but Angus was no longer whole. He was grieving. He was lost. He was trying to move forward while the ground beneath him was gone. And this is where the decline begins. Not suddenly, not dramatic, quiet, almost invisible. The kind of pain that does not scream, the kind that whispers, the kind that waits. Grief does not arrive loudly. It does not shake the ground or announce itself to the world. It works in quiet circles, tightening slowly, making the simplest things feel heavy. For Angus's life after his father's passing became something he moved through rather than lived within. The colors of the world faded around him. He continued to work, continued to appear in public spaces, continued to meet friends, but a part of him was missing, and the absence was visible to anyone who looked closely. He tried to keep himself surrounded by people, friends, cast members, old classmates, new acquaintances, but even in a crowded room, he seemed alone. His laughter still came, but it came late, as if he needed a moment to remember how to sound like himself. His eyes held a distance, as though he were watching his own life from someplace behind glass. During this time, he stayed close to Oakland. He walked the same streets he had walked as a teenager. He visited the places where he used to work. He sat in the parking lots and looked at nothing. Home was supposed to bring comfort. Instead, it reminded him of everything he had lost, because everywhere he looked, his father was still there. In the air, in the memories, in the routines, but not in the world. Not anymore. Friends said the grief did not break him at once. It wore him down gradually. A slow erosion, a quiet dissolution of spirit. He tried to stay busy. He tried to act. He tried to look forward. Plans for future seasons of Euphoria were discussed. Public appearances were scheduled. Interviews were arranged. The world around him kept moving, and it expected him to move too. But grief makes time feel different. Days blend into months. Moments feel heavier than hours. The world does not slow down just because your heart has stopped. And Angus was caught between a life that demanded motion and a pain that wanted stillness. There were times when he appeared to be doing better, days where he laughed with friends, days where he shared jokes online, days where the weight seemed lighter. But grief is unpredictable. Healing is not a straight line. Some nights were quiet, others were filled with restlessness that had no name. His family noticed it. His close friends noticed it. They wanted to help. They tried to bring him back into himself. But there are some pains that live too deep to be reached by words or comfort. Angus did not push anyone away. He did not isolate himself. He simply faded inward. The world still loved him. Fans saw him as the gentle heart on the screen, the protector, the boy with the soft voice and solemn eyes, the one who cared. But fame is a mirror that reflects only what others want to see. It does not show what lies behind the eyes of the person being observed. The days before his death were unremarkable to the outside world. He spent time with family. He was in Oakland. He was in the city where he grew up. He was surrounded by familiarity. But familiarity can sometimes hurt more than distance. Home can become a reminder of everything time cannot restore. On the night of July 30th, 2023, he spoke with friends. He sounded tired, but not undone. He sounded quiet, but not broken. People often imagine tragedy makes itself obvious, that there are signs, warnings, alarms. But the truth is that the greatest pain is often silent. The heaviest grief is the one that cannot find words. On the morning of July 31st, 2023, the world woke to the news. It spread with a suddenness that felt unreal. His family announced that he had been struggling deeply with the loss of his father. They said his heart was too heavy. They said he was trying. They said he was loved. The world mourned him loudly. Social media flooded with messages. Fans posted scenes of Fesco, clips of interviews, pictures of Angus smiling with his castmate. The grief was real, but it came too late. It came after the silence had already closed. Yet this story does not end with tragedy, because tragedy is not the full shape of a life. We return now, not to the end, but to the center, to the boy before the grief, to the young man before fame, to the heart that the world loved, even when it did not know how to protect it. We go deeper now, into the years before Euphoria, the moments that shaped him, the friendships that grounded him, the humor that never left him, the love that defined him more than the pain ever did. Before the world knew his name, before cameras and interviews and red carpets, Angus lived a life that was simple, grounded, and deeply human. His friends from Oakland remember him not as the actor from Euphoria, but as the boy who made everyone else feel seen. He had a quiet way of making others comfortable, a way of listening fully, without judgment, without rushing to respond. He didn't speak to fill the silence. He spoke only when words mattered. His friends often said that being around him felt like sitting next to someone who understood you without needing an explanation. He had a way of observing the world that made people feel less alone. He noticed details others ignored, the tremor in a laugh, the pause before a confession, the way someone looks away when they're holding pain. These small human cues became part of him. He didn't learn them for performance. He learned them simply by being present. This emotional awareness became the foundation of who he was. It shaped his friendships, his humor, his empathy. It was the reason people trusted him, and it was the reason Fesco became so real. In early high school, he began to develop a style of humor that later became a signature, part of his personality. Dry, calm, understated. The kind of humor that hits a second after the sentence is spoken. His friends say he could take a room full of tension and dissolve it with one soft remark. Said gently, said with timing that felt effortless. He did not try to be funny. He simply was. At Oakland School for the Arts, he blended into the background without ever disappearing. He wasn't the loud one. He wasn't the center of attention. He was the one who watched the center. The one who saw everything happening around him. The one who made others feel safe enough to be themselves. In a world that rewards loudness, he held space in silence. It made people gravitate to him without knowing why. The accident changed him. The fall, the darkness. The hours are unconscious. The surgeries, the metal plate in his skull, the long, slow recovery. It is difficult to return to the world after almost losing it. Something shifts. Priorities rearranged. Survival becomes sacred and fragile. He carried the awareness of life's thin thread every single day afterward. He never said it to impress anyone. He said it once, quietly, "I feel like I'm living on borrowed time." Borrowed time is a blessing and a weight. It can make moments feel more meaningful, but it can also make them feel temporary. He lived with both. As he grew older, he never chased achievement. He never chased status. He never tried to become anything except himself. And that is exactly what made him extraordinary. When he stepped onto the set of Euphoria for the first time, something happened that no one expected. The camera didn't just capture him, it recognized him. Everything he had lived, everything he had survived, everything he had observed, came through naturally. The slow way he spoke, the depth behind pauses, the softness behind his eyes. The world believed Fesco, because Fesco was not a performance. He was a reflection. The character was written to be hardened by the world, yet gentle with those he loved. Someone shaped by survival, but still capable of tenderness. Someone who had seen too much, but had not lost the ability to care. And Angus understood that without needing direction. The cast felt it too. Zendaya often said that Angus was the heart of the show, that his presence grounded the intensity around him, that he created calm in chaos. Off camera, he was the same. He didn't need to impress anyone. He didn't need to speak loudly to be heard. His authenticity was undeniable. But fame creates distance. Not intentionally, not through arrogance, simply by the weight of attention. People began to see him not as Angus, but as Fesco. Not as a person, but as a symbol. A character projected onto his real identity. And the world rarely understands that symbols do not bleed. But people do. As the show grew, his visibility grew. Interviews, events, public expectations, online commentary. He handled it with grace. But it was never where he felt at home. Fame is a spotlight that warms and burns in the same motion. And he was not built for spectacle. He was built for connection. Yet, deep inside, his emotional world was delicate. Everything he felt fully. Love, loss, grief, fear, beauty. His spirit was porous. Nothing passed through him without leaving a mark. And when his father passed, the loss didn't just mark him, it hollowed him. But we are not yet at the final descent. There is something important to understand before that. It is this: Angus did not want to leave the world. He wanted to stay. He was trying to stay. Grief was not a decision. It was a weight. And even the strongest hearts can grow tired from carrying too much alone. We continue to the next chapter. In the months after his father's passing, Angus seemed to exist in two different worlds. In one, he was surrounded by people who loved him. Friends, family, castmates, people who called, visited, checked in, offered comfort. And in that world, he responded. He smiled. He nodded. He talked softly. He let others think he was managing. In the other world, the private world, the quiet world inside him, grief moved like a slow tide. Not violent, not loud, just constant. It pulled at him from the inside, in ways that could not be seen from the outside. Grief can make a person feel like a stranger in their own life. Rooms feel unfamiliar. Voices sound distant. Laughter echoes instead of lands. Nothing feels wrong enough to scream, but nothing feels right enough to hold on to. He tried to stay grounded. He stayed close to Oakland. He spent time with his family. He visited familiar places, hoping routine could anchor him back into himself. Sometimes he would sit on the steps in front of his childhood home, looking out at the street, remembering the days when life had been simpler, when tragedy was not something he carried. Memory can be both comforting and wounding. His friends noticed a shift. It was not dramatic. It was not sudden. It was subtle. He was quieter. He paused longer before speaking. He slept late. He looked tired even on days when he had rested. He seemed present, but slightly behind his own eyes. But they also saw him laugh, joke, smile, and so they believed he was healing. Sometimes healing and hurting looked the same from the outside. The world continued to see Fesco, the loyal friend, the soft-hearted protector, the character whose pain was noble and cinematic. But pain in real life is not cinematic. It is ordinary. It is quiet. It is invisible until it is too late. He was offered more roles. Directors wanted him. Studios wanted him. Fashion houses wanted him. Hollywood recognized the rare human truth he carried. But he could not step forward confidently into a future when the past still held his heart. He did not speak about this publicly. He barely spoke about it privately. He held it quietly, gently, the way he held everything. There were moments, brief ones, where the world around him seemed to brighten. He would tell jokes. He would dance. He would stay up late talking with friends about life and fate, and laughter, and stupid memories. And in those moments, it was as if everything had returned to the way it once was. But grief is patient. It waits. It does not leave simply because joy arrives for a moment. He often said he felt like he still had work to do, that he wanted to make his father proud. But when the person you want to make proud is gone, the compass you use to navigate your life no longer points anywhere certain. Every achievement feels incomplete. Every milestone feels unfinished. Love that has nowhere to go becomes heavy. In July 2023, he was in Oakland again, the city of his beginning, the city of his father, the city of his memories. The family was close. Friends were nearby. He was not alone. Yet loneliness can exist even in the presence of others, especially when grief lives unspoken. The night before his death, he talked with people. He sounded tired, but not defeated. Soft, but not broken. He spoke like someone carrying weight, not someone letting go. He laughed a little. He expressed love. He did not speak in farewells. And that is the truth that hurts the most. The world wants to understand tragedy. It wants a clear reason, a single cause, a final statement. But loss does not follow logic. It does not offer explanations. It simply takes. On the morning of July 31st, 2023, Angus Cloud passed away at the age of 25. His family said he had been struggling deeply with the loss of his father. They said his heart was heavy. They said they hoped he was at peace. The news spread fast. Fans posted memories, clips, photos, and words of love. The world mourned the character they had fallen in love with, but his family and friends mourned the person. The boy from Oakland, the quiet laugh, the slow words, the gentle heart. However, we must not let the ending overshadow life. Because a person is not defined by the moment they leave the world. A person is defined by the worlds they touched while they were here. And Angus touched many. He touched the show that needed authenticity. He touched the friends who needed gentleness. He touched the audience who needed someone real. He touched anyone who has ever loved and lost. Anyone who has ever carried pain quietly. Anyone who has ever survived when they weren't sure they could. His story is not just a tragedy. His story is about tenderness in a hard world. His story is survival, even when survival hurts. His story is love that did not vanish, even when he did. The following days were filled with hollow silence. Matthew's room in the facility was clean and bright, yet it felt lifeless, as though it belonged to a man who was only pretending to still be here. Staff members checked on him. Doctors tried changing his prescriptions again. They spoke carefully to him, as if afraid that a single wrong sentence might tip him over the edge. But the truth was simpler. Matthew was exhausted. The world outside expected him to be Chandler Bing forever. A quick joke, a quick smile, but the man inside was bleeding, and he no longer had the strength to hide the wound. On November 2nd, 2022, he returned home. He posted again, on his social media, a photo of him in the ocean. The caption was almost childlike in its hope. He spoke about peace, about how water heals him, about how he was learning to live. His fans flooded the comments with love. They told him they were proud of him. They told him they were here. They told him he had saved their lives without even knowing. But Matthew knew something his audience didn't. He understood that addiction wasn't a monster that left forever. It was a creature that paced back and forth behind a locked door, waiting for the moment his hands shook, waiting for the moment he felt alone, waiting for the moment the world grew quiet enough for its whisper to be heard again. He tried to outrun it. He played pickleball in the mornings. He swam in his home pool. He wrote scenes for new projects that never fully took shape. He called friends just to talk. He kept telling himself that tomorrow would be easier. But the truth is, even in sobriety, Matthew was still living with the memory of a man he had once been. Someone reckless, someone desperate, someone he didn't want to meet again. And memories can be heavier than the addiction itself. Throughout 2023, he continued appearing to the public at times. His interviews were thoughtful, they were warm, but they were tired. He spoke slowly now. He paused carefully. He looked like someone who had lived decades inside a single lifetime. On May 3rd, 2023, he posted a photo of himself standing under a dark sky beside his home pool, the city lights glowing behind him. The caption read simply, "I'm Matt Man." That it was a joke, a light one, but also a message. He was trying to be his own hero. He was trying to save himself, not for fans, not for strangers, not for a character written on paper, but for Matthew Perry, the boy from Ottawa, who just wanted to be enough. The night before his death, there was nothing dramatic, nothing alarming. He played pickleball again. He talked to his assistant. He went home. He relaxed. There was no visible sense of doom. That is the strange part of quiet tragedies. They do not announce themselves. They arrive slowly and gently, like evening light fading into night. On October 28, 2023, Matthew Perry was found in his hot tub. The house was silent. The water was still. There were no signs of struggle, no final message, no staged goodbye, just peace. A peace he had chased all his life. A peace that came far too late. He was 54 years old. The news spread across the world within minutes. Social media froze. Actors who had shared the stage with him went silent. Friends, castmates were not just co-workers. They were a family shaped by a decade of shared laughter. They did not immediately release statements. They did not appear online. They grieved privately, because sometimes grief is too real for words. The world spoke of Chandler Bing. The jokes, the charm, the comedic timing. But those who knew Matthew spoke of something far more important. His heart, the way he noticed pain in others. How he would stop in the middle of his own worst moments to help someone else breathe through theirs. Matthew once said, "When I die, I want people to remember I tried. I want to be remembered for helping others, not for friends." That is his legacy. Not the laughter he created, not the fame he earned, but the lives he pulled back from the edge while standing on that edge himself. Matthew Perry's story is not a tragedy because he fell. It is a tragedy because he kept standing up, again and again. And the world never understood how heavy that was. His final chapter is not his death. His final chapter is every person who fights through one more day because of the words he left behind. And the story is not over yet. After Matthew's passing, the world began to speak about him in a way that had always been hidden beneath the laughter. People who had once only known him as Chandler Bing started hearing about the man behind the character, the one who had walked into rehab dozens of times, not because he was weak, but because he refused to give up on himself, the one who opened the doors of his own home to strangers who were struggling with addiction, because he believed no one should fight alone, the one who created a safe house in Malibu dedicated to recovery, a place where people could rebuild their lives, brick by fragile brick. The world began to realize that Matthew Perry had lived his life like a lighthouse. He stood in the storm, battered and weathered. Yet his light pointed the way for others who couldn't find their way through the darkness. Even when he felt like the water was rising around him, he kept the light on for someone else. His friends, the ones who had shared the stage with him for 10 years, mourned deeply. Their silence was not absent. It was love. Because how do you speak about someone who knew your laughter, your tears, your fears, your failures, and still held your hand through it all? Their grief did not need words. It lived in every quiet memory. The world revisited every scene, every joke, every pause. They noticed things they had never noticed before. The slight sadness in the corners of his smile, the exhaustion behind the timing that seemed effortless, the pain in the eyes of a man who could make millions laugh, while he himself felt like he could barely breathe. Matthew once said that making people laugh was the greatest privilege of his life, but it was not his purpose. His purpose was helping people who were drowning the way he once drowned, and he did. He saved people, thousands, maybe more, not through fame, but through truth. He spoke openly about addiction when Hollywood begged him to hide it. He shared his darkest days not to shock, but to hold someone's hand who might be living their own darkest day. He said that if his story could keep even one person alive, then everything he endured was worth it. And that is the legacy that does not fade. Matthew Perry was not a tragedy. He was a fighter, a survivor, a healer, a man who lost battles but never surrendered the war, a man who lived with a pain that most people will never understand. Yet he chose to lift others anyway. His story teaches us something the world often forgets. The funniest person in the room is not always the happiest. The brightest smile may hide the deepest wounds. The ones who make others feel okay are often the ones who need help the most. We like to believe we understand people just by what we see. But Matthew reminds us that every person carries a world inside them, filled with storms and sunsets, victories and scars, beginnings and endings. We must learn to look deeper, to listen softer, to care louder, because the real mystery of life is not how someone dies. It is how they lived. Matthew lived with courage. He lived with love. He lived with a heart that refused to stop giving, even when it was breaking. There is a quiet intensity to the story of Angus Cloud, the kind of intensity that does not announce itself with fanfare or flash, but seeps into every room, every frame, every silent glance. Born on July 10, 1998, in Oakland, California, he carried within him the echoes of streets that had seen both hardship and humanity in equal measure. From the beginning, his life seemed shaped by contrasts, hope and struggle, laughter and silence, connection and solitude. These dualities were stitched into the fabric of his existence, guiding his steps as he navigated a world that was often unkind to those who dared to be themselves. Even in his earliest years, Angus exhibited a depth that was unusual for a boy his age. While other children played and laughed without care, he absorbed the small stories of life, the crackling laughter from neighboring apartments, the rhythm of footsteps on pavement, the soft murmur of conversations that drifted through open windows. His mother, a woman of tireless dedication, balanced multiple jobs to provide for the family. And it was from her that he learned the first lessons in resilience. His father was a distant presence, a fleeting figure whose absence carved spaces that Angus would later fill with reflection and self-reliance. School did not offer sanctuary. While Angus was not overtly bullied, the sharp edges of adolescence brushed against him frequently. He often found solace in solitude, in quiet corners where he could watch the world unfold without interruption. Even then, the clarity of his perception was remarkable. He saw patterns in human behavior, understood nuances in conversation, and recognized the subtle power of presence. It was as though he carried a lens through which the ordinary became extraordinary, and the ordinary people around him became characters in stories only he could fully comprehend. Music played a central role in shaping his inner landscape. The faint hum of vinyl records in his home, the sounds of street performers weaving melodies on sidewalks, and the beats of local hip-hop and R&B formed the soundtrack of his youth. Each note seemed to resonate with his thoughts, embedding within him an appreciation for rhythm, tone, and emotion that would later become essential to his craft as an actor. Through music, he understood the art of conveying feelings without words, a skill that would define his approach to performance start by his early teens. Around 2011, Angus had found an outlet in skateboarding and street culture. The streets of Oakland became both a playground and classroom. Skate parks offered freedom, a place to experiment with balance and movement, while the surrounding city taught lessons about survival, resilience, and observation. These formative experiences were subtle but profound. They honed his instincts, cultivated patience, and instilled a sense of empathy that was both natural and hard-won. He learned to move through the world with attentiveness, to notice what others missed, and to find meaning in the fleeting moments that often go unseen. High school brought its own set of challenges and discoveries. Angus was not a star athlete or an academically celebrated student, yet he commanded attention in ways that were quiet, yet undeniable. Friends described him as someone who listened more than he spoke, who absorbed the energy of a room and responded in gestures and glances rather than words. He developed a presence that was magnetic without being performative, a charm that was understated but compelling. The lean frame he carried, coupled with a slightly slouched posture, gave him a casual, almost effortless appearance, while his eyes betrayed the intensity of his internal life. By 2014, after graduating high school, Angus faced the uncertainties that defined the transition from youth to adulthood. The ordinary paths, college, steady work, conventional careers felt constrictive to a spirit restless for expression. It was around this time that he began gravitating toward the performing arts, drawn to the subtle power of storytelling and the possibility of translating his inner world into something visible. Acting became not just a pursuit, but a language through which he could communicate the depth and complexity of what he had observed for so many years. Friends and acquaintances recognized a raw talent in him, an ability to inhabit a character fully, to convey emotion with a kind of authenticity that seemed almost innate. His early career was marked by challenges, as is often the case with those who enter the entertainment world without connections or privilege. Opportunities were sporadic, and rejection was frequent. Each no carried the weight of a lesson, and each small success was magnified in significance. Despite the uncertainty, Angus remained committed to his craft. His approach was patient, deliberate, and grounded in the principle that performance was not about spectacle but about truth. He understood that real artistry comes from lived experience, and his own life had already supplied him with a rich palette from which to draw. Around 2017, Angus's trajectory began to shift. He caught the attention of casting directors, not because of a conventional appearance or polished resume, but because of his ability to embody characters with realism. His performances radiated an honesty that was rare, a blend of vulnerability and quiet confidence that translated effortlessly on screen. He could convey a lifetime of emotion in a single expression, a nuance that left audiences and peers alike captivated. It was during this period that he began to gain recognition, a slow but steady ascent that would eventually lead him to more prominent roles. Yet the climb was never without its pressures. As his presence grew in the industry, so too did the expectations. The world of Hollywood is notoriously unforgiving, particularly for those who do not conform to its conventional molds. Angus navigated this terrain with the same observant intelligence that had served him since childhood. He remained grounded, aware of the fleeting nature of fame and the transient quality of attention. Friends noted that despite increasing visibility, he retained a sense of humility, an understanding that the art mattered more than the accolades. The years that followed were a mixture of accomplishment and challenge. He experienced the exhilaration of recognition, the satisfaction of work that resonated with audiences, and the camaraderie of peers who shared his passion for storytelling. But alongside these highs were the pressures and vulnerabilities that accompanied life in the public eye. The expectations of fans, the scrutiny of social media, and the relentless pace of production demanded resilience. Angus faced these challenges with a quiet determination, relying on the grounding influences of his early life and the lessons he had absorbed from a city that had taught him the value of awareness, patience, and emotional intelligence. Despite the external pressures, there was always a private life, a space where Angus could retreat and reflect. He maintained connections with family and close friends, relationships that anchored him and provided a counterbalance to the often superficial demands of fame. In these moments, away from cameras and spotlights, he displayed the qualities that defined him: thoughtfulness, humor, empathy, and an ability to listen deeply. These traits, cultivated over years of observation and introspection, remained central to who he was, even as the world came to recognize him primarily for his on-screen work. As the story unfolds toward its eventual conclusion, it is essential to recognize the richness of the life that preceded the final chapters. Angus Cloud was not merely an actor or a public figure. He was a collection of experiences, observations, relationships, and reflections. His journey from the streets of Oakland to the screens of audiences everywhere was marked by learning, growth, and authenticity. Every glance, every pause, every subtle expression carried the weight of lived experience. It is in these details, often overlooked, that the true narrative of his life resides. Even as we approach the ending of this story, the legacy of Angus Cloud remains in the quiet spaces, the lessons of empathy, resilience, and authenticity he leaves behind. His life, rich with nuance and depth, serves as a reminder that fame is not merely about visibility, but about the human truths we bring into the light. It is a story that continues to resonate long after the final frame has faded, inviting reflection, admiration, and understanding. So when we remember him, let it not be the final silence of the night of October 28, 2023. Let it not be the headlines, the speculation, or the stillness of the water where he was found. Remember, instead, the boy who just wanted to make his father proud, the teenager who believed making people laugh was his calling, the actor who became an icon without ever meaning to, the man who fought every day just to see one more sunrise, the soul who saved others even when he couldn't always save himself. Matthew Perry did not leave the world quietly. He left it having changed thousands of lives. His laughter still echoes, his words still guide, his story still teaches. And somewhere, if peace is a place beyond pain, beyond addiction, beyond the noise of the world, then Matthew is there now, not acting, not pretending, not performing, just breathing. Finally breathing.